What should our top priorities be when considering a legislative solution to actually address this issue?
We looked in it extensively, especially when we started working with our federal partners. Those permissions were granted by Congress, right? So they can't be delegated. Like, for example, some TFO programs, temporary federal officer programs, where the U.S. Marshals will deputize local law enforcement with certain abilities to do U.S. Marshals things. We looked into that, and again, we feel that the authority couldn't be delegated. Like, that would have been the simplest approach. Deputize me as whatever,
right,
and under your supervision or guidance, we would move forward and do this, but we don't think that's correct. So I don't know what we would do as a simple solution, other than we're in this room here trying to figure it out. But we've tried to look down some of those legal avenues of doing it correctly, but that was what we came up with, and they can't delegate those authorities if they were to bless us as a TFO.
There has to be training, there has to be some accountability, there has to be transparency for all the agencies that start, and you're going to have to start somewhere with some credentialing of some law enforcement agencies at the appropriate level.
What are things that we could be doing right now to make sure that we're preparing for that we're taking proactive steps to be able to allow state and local law enforcement to have this capacity or this ability in the future?
Hello, Patriots, and welcome back to MAGA Capital, the voice of unapologetic truth, liberty, and the rule of law. If you're sick and tired of weak policies that endanger our communities and embolden criminals, hit that like button, drop a comment, and slam that subscribe button. This is where we fight back with facts, faith, and fire. Now let me tell you, what you just heard from Senator Katie Britt should shake every law-abiding American to their core. Drones are no longer just tools for hobbyists or tech geeks. These things have become flying threats. Smugglers, criminals, and gang members are using drones to drop contraband into our prisons. We're talking weapons, drugs, cell phones, you name it. And our law enforcement can't do a damn thing about it. Why? Because Washington has tied their hand behind their backs. Senator Britt brought the heat in that hearing, calling out the insanity. In Alabama, like so many other states, the feds expect state and local cops to be the first responders when drones show up. But guess what? Those same cops have no legal authority to act. They can't jam the signal. They can't shoot it down. They can't even track it half the time. That's right, Patriots, we got the finest men and women in uniform standing ready. And the law says they have to just stand there and watch. Captain Wilson and Sergeant Doley laid it out plain. Congress gave the federal government all the authority, and none of it can be shared. Not even temporarily. That means even if you deputize a sheriff or train him with federal resources, he still can't act without breaking the law. Think about how crazy that is. We're sitting here with 21st century threats and laws written in the Stone Age. And it's not just about sporting events or prisons. This is about national security. Imagine a drone flying over a nuclear plant or military base. The people closest to the threat, our local heroes, would be powerless to stop it.
Thank you for holding this hearing today on this important topic. I hear this from people all across Alabama. The lack of drone mitigation authority for state and local law enforcement has become a critical issue. We see it specifically when we're looking at large public gatherings, which includes large sporting events, which my state takes great pride in. And we want to make sure that public safety comes first. Even when it comes to federal installations in Alabama, it's often state and local law enforcement and personnel who are the closest and most capable of actually responding. We see this too. Our Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, who is headed by Secretary Hal Taylor, who does a tremendous job. They assist federal partners and are likely the first ones to be able to respond and to do it in a meaningfully and efficient way. But without proper authority, they can't act with the speed and coordination that they need that matters most in a time of a crisis. So I'm going to address this question to Captain Wilson and Sergeant Dooley to start with. Is there a legislative solution that is as simple as just extending existing mitigation authorities to state and local law enforcement that would actually help in these situations? Or is there other gaps in the law that needs to be considered? And what should our top priorities be when considering a legislative solution to actually address this issue?
We looked in it extensively, especially when we started working with our federal partners. Those permissions were granted by Congress, right? So they can't be delegated. Like, for example, some TFO programs, temporary federal officer programs, where the U.S. Marshals will deputize local law enforcement with certain abilities to do U.S. Marshals things. We looked into that, and again, we feel that the authority couldn't be delegated. Like, that would have been the simplest approach. Deputize me as whatever,
Right.
and under your supervision or guidance, we would move forward and do this, but we don't think that's correct. So I don't know what we would do as a simple solution, other than we're in this room here trying to figure it out. But we've tried to look down some of those legal avenues of doing it correctly, but we that was what we came up with, and they can't delegate those authorities if they were to bless us as a TFO.
Again, like Sergeant Dooley said earlier, that there has to be training, there has to be some accountability, there has to be transparency for all the agencies that start, and you're going to have to start somewhere with some credentialing of some law enforcement agencies at the appropriate level.
So are those things that we could be doing right now? What are things that we could be doing right now to make sure that we're preparing for that we're taking proactive steps to be able to allow state and local law enforcement to have this capacity or this ability in the future?
So I think that right now you should probably establish like who would run this from
Okay.
a federal level. That would, once we get started with that, then we start figuring out how we should roll this out, who should be a part of the initial rollout, and what type of equipment we should be using, and more importantly, some type of process in place of standardizing how this is used, a reporting process in place, et cetera, to where if I do deploy something and we do detect and we do mitigate or whatever it is, that there is proper, like we talked about multiple times, of accountability. So if I'm right, everything's fine, I submit a report. If I did something wrong, we can identify it and either correct it or discipline or whatever the case is. There has to be right or wrong. We have to have transparency to do that. But I think we should identify a federal entity of some sort that should control this, moving out towards public safety.
And is the training in place now to be able to make these moves?
No, ma'am.
No.
So we would need to be able to invest in that as well.
Yes.
Okay. I want to turn to you, Secretary Dixon, in my last few minutes. In Alabama, like most other states, we have seen an increase in drones using to fly contraband into correctional facilities. As you have testified today and spoken with my colleagues about, that presents a real risk, not only to inmates, but obviously the officers as well. Based on your experience, can you kind of explain to us some of the unique challenges related to drone mitigation when it comes to to a correctional setting, and how those should inform us as we're looking at potential legislation?
Thank you, Senator. One of the most significant challenges is they come in and we don't know they're there. Often they fly. Sometimes they fly high. They're fast. They're swift. So often the contraband is delivered and we never saw it coming. So we're defenseless. We have limited systems that help detect when they're coming in, but not nearly as advanced as they should be, and as the technology is capable to deliver right now if we had the federal authorities we need. And I would just like to add, not to be melodramatic, but I would encourage us to act with the same sense of urgency that we would if we were watching on the news right now that multiple automatic weapons were just delivered into one of our compounds by drone and to gang members, and they escaped or harmed or killed other inmates or staff, because that is a very likely scenario. That's not being an alarmist, that's very likely. And I'm not implying we're not, it's why we're here today, and we're so thankful that we're having this discussion.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moody.
And let's talk prisons. Secretary Dixon painted a bone-chilling picture. Drones flying silently over the yard, dropping automatic weapons to gang members. And the guards don't even know it happened until it's too late. That's not a dystopian movie. That's where we are right now. And what's the response from Congress? Meetings, hearings, committees. The same bloated government bureaucracy that created this mess now wants to study it. Meanwhile, patriots in uniform are begging for tools and training to stop what they know is coming. Let's be clear. This is what happens when you let soft-on-crime leftists set the rules. They've crippled our police, opened our borders, and now they're letting gang members weaponize drones. Enough is enough. Here's what needs to happen. Congress must immediately pass legislation that gives state and local law enforcement full drone mitigation authority. Not later. Not after more studies. Now, train them, equip them, and let them do their jobs. This isn't about politics. It's about survival. So, if you're watching this and you believe in law and order, in protecting your community, in standing with the men and women who risk their lives every day, then raise your voice. Share this video. Email your representatives. Let them know America is not waiting around while criminals take to the skies. This is MAGA Capital, and we don't back down. We speak truth, we defend freedom, and we call out cowardice wherever it hides. Like, comment, and subscribe for more unfiltered conservative truth. And never forget, we are the majority. And together, we're going to take our country back.